Hello YouTube, this is Kazeel, and welcome to a mod spotlight on Big Reactors. This is going to be an informational video that has two parts to it, and in this first part here we're going to take you through the basic reactors and all the functionalities and ins and outs of them, and so you can understand how to do them and build them properly. To start off with, you're going to need to find yourself some yellowite ore in the world. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've already found some and may want to know what to do with it. What is Big Reactors all about? Well, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take that yellowite ore and stick it in a furnace. Now, you'll probably want to duplicate this ore if you can. There's lots of mods that can do it. Applied Energistics is one. Mechanism is another. Rotary Craft may, I'm not exactly sure. I know that Ender.io can do it, and there's just a whole bunch of them. So if you can get those to duplicate them, they'll turn them into various kinds of dust. Those dust can then be put into this furnace and smelted into a yellorium ingot. This is going to be necessary for all of the crafting materials that you're going to be using to make crafting patterns that you're going to be using to make all the big reactors. Another thing you're going to need to do is create what's called a graphite bar. This can be made by smelting either coal or charcoal in a furnace, and you're going to get yourself a graphite bar. Alright, so here's what the patterns look like. To make the basic reactor casing, this is going to be the corners and the framework of your reactors. It's just going to be 4 graphite bars, which is 4 coal, 1 yellorium ingot, and 4 iron ingots. To make the reactor controller, you're going to need at least just one of these for each reactor. You can't have more than one or less than one. You're going to need 4 reactor casings, 2 yellorium ingots, 1 diamond, and 1 redstone. This is the most expensive piece in the set, but you're going to need one of these, so pick one up. You're going to need at least 1 yellorium fuel rod. The pattern is there. You're going to need to cap that fuel rod with a control rod. Pattern is there. You're going to need a way to get power out of your reactor with the reactor power tap, and the pattern is there. It's reactor casings with the redstone. And then you're going to need a way to put fuel in and take waste out. That can be done with the access port, which is just a piston, a chest, and 4 of the reactor casings. Lastly, the optional piece in all of the mix is the reactor glass. This lets you see inside of your reactor and see what's going on. This can be made with 1 reactor casing and 2 glass. This is not a necessary piece. You don't need one of these. However, a lot of people opt for it. So the smallest reactor that you can do is a 3x3, and I'm going to build one here for you real quick to show you what it looks like. And you're going to need to build yourself a frame. Now this is true for all reactors. You're going to need to build the frame out of the reactor casing. So it's going to need to be like that, exactly like that. So no matter what the size is, this being the smallest, it has to be framed in reactor casings. Now from here you can do whatever you want. You can put the power tap or the controller here, you can put the power tap there, you can put the access port there, whatever you want. I'm going to just go ahead and put the reactor casing there, and then in the middle of your reactor you're going to want to put your fuel rod. Like I said, you need one of these, at least one of these, and then you have to cap that fuel rod with the control rod. And I'll tell you about what all of these do here in just a second. Now the reactor controller can go in anywhere. I'm just going to put it there. I'm going to put the power tap anywhere, and this is how you get your power out. I'm just going to put the access port here, and I'll just go ahead and stick a glass back here. Now you'll notice when I put the glass down, it changes. Now that tells you that the reactor is properly made. If I were to take that out, for example, and put that there, it would tell me, if I were to come over here and right click and say control rods need to be placed somewhere, or the control rod, the meat needs to be on top of fuel rods, and we don't have any fuel rods. So put the fuel rod back in, and there we go. This is how you make the most basic reactor. So now what we're going to do is, first of all, you're going to want to attach some sort of power transfer system, whether that's through an energy cell or some sort of cabling that can transfer the power. It is RF, so keep that in mind. Things like EU cable or the copper cables and things like that transfer EU won't work. Neither will Buildcraft power, which both of those are becoming pretty obsolete. Most mod packs run off of RF. So a lot of the power conduits and things like that are going to be able to transfer RF. So redstone flux. Next thing you're going to want to do is come over to the reactor access port and put in, let's grab some Elorium here, and you're going to want to put in at least one Elorium ingot. And what that's going to do is that's going to convert the fuel into a liquid. Now that's an important distinction, because when you come over here to, say, the furnace here, and we use a solid fuel source to burn whatever that we're going to burn, what's going to happen is it's going to finish the process, and if we're just cooking one, then we're wasting effectively the rest of the fuel that it used. So with liquid, though, that's not the case. What it does is it turns that one solid ingot into a bucket's worth of fuel. And since it runs in millibuckets, there's 1,000 millibuckets equals 1 bucket. I can turn this on, and you'll see that I'm using buckets there, or millibuckets there. So we just used 4 millibuckets. So that's 0.004 buckets. So that's a really efficient way to run things. So now let's take a look. If I were to turn this on with 1 ingot in there, it's going to run at roughly 60 RF per tick. Now, that's pretty good, but it can be better, and I'll show you how. So if you think about some of your starting furnaces and stuff, or starting generators that you're going to be running, I know Ender.io's most basic generator runs at like 20 RF per tick. So this is 3 times better than that already. But if we were to come in here and stick the full stack in there, what this is going to do is, you remember that it just was a sliver of fuel in here. What it did is it converted the rest of that, a couple more of those ingots into the liquid, and it filled the fuel rod. What this is doing is it's creating more reactor, basically, more reaction in there. So now we're up to almost 260 RF per tick. That's so much more. Okay, so that's where I'm getting this information right. This is how much power we're producing. So looking at this AI right here, this user interface that we're looking at right here, this is your reactor temperature, which isn't really that much information that you really need to worry about at this moment. Once we start getting into computer craft, then it's going to be more of a thing that you want to pay attention to. This is how much fuel we're burning up per tick. So remember, there's 20 ticks per second in Minecraft world. So multiply this by 20, and that's how much fuel we're burning up a second. We can also come over here and hover over our core, and you'll notice that we have a total of 4,000 millibuckets in there, which is 4 ingots worth. And you can see that as the fuel number goes down, the waste number goes up. When that waste number reaches 1,000, it will then produce an ingot right here of waste. Okay? And you're going to want to remove that as soon as possible so that this can stay full of fuel. The other one down here is your fuel reactivity. It's at 100%. That's what you want it to do. Okay? And then 2 other things here. You have casing heat and core heat. Basically, you can read the description here. And I wish I could get rid of... There we go. I thought it was 0. Okay, so the casing heat here is how much... I'll just read it. Heat of the reactor's casing. High heat raises high energy output and coolant conversion. So the higher this is, the more energy you're going to be putting out. The coolant conversion is for turbines, so don't worry about that. And then this one here is core heat is transferred to the casing. Transfer rate is based on the design of the reactor's interior. So what we want this to do is we want this one to be really low, and we want this one to be really high. Well, not so high, but as high as we can get it, without this one being so much more higher. You can't get this one below this one. So like this one's going to run at 570, whatever, for this reactor here. This is going to run at 700. If we were to somehow be able to manipulate these, this core heat could never be below the temperature of the casing heat. It's just something for you to keep in mind. You're never going to get this up here and this one way down here. You're not going to get that. Best you can hope for is getting them pretty even, somewhere in the middle here. And then lastly, you're going to notice that you've got an energy buffer. There's 10 million RF in here. That's a lot. So it's going to take a while for this to fill up. But the reservoir in here is useful. So you can take this out, use this as a battery, kind of sort of if you want to. So, all right, this is coming up on 1,000 here, and maybe once this turns into 1,000 here, I can show you what the waste looks like. What else is there I can show you? Okay, so there's a button down here to auto eject waste or do not auto eject waste. This is for automation down the road, and I'll show you how to do a little bit of automation, no problem. Another thing to notice that as your fuel is becoming waste, you'll notice that the RF dropped down to just below 100. Since it went to 1,000, the waste was 1,000, and we have auto eject waste turned on. What it did is it stuck that wasted ingot, the cyanide ingot, here in the access port. Okay, and then our power turned back up. Now, as this continues to turn into waste, this is going to drop down to below 200. Then it's going to produce a cyanide ingot, kick it out into the access port, and jump back up to 256. So that's how the basic operations of the reactor, the ins and outs. Probably more information than you need to know if you're building something this small. Not that big of a deal. Okay, so one thing to note as you're doing this, if the energy buffer gets to 100%, you want to make sure that you turn the reactor off. It will still continue to spend fuel and create waste even if your energy buffer is full. So even if it has nothing to do, it's still going to burn your fuel and pretty much waste your fuel. So you want to be sure to turn it off if you're not using it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'm going to get rid of all of this here. And I'm going to put some of this on my bar because I wanted to show you some of that here down the line. Okay, so one of the things that you need to understand about reactors is heat. Most of the reactors that you're going to run into, even if you run into like a reactor craft, you're going to be dealing with heat management. One of the ways that you can manage heat in a reactor is using solid blocks of metal. Now, if I were to switch over to the ftbwiki.org/Big Reactors, and I'll have that website is right here for you if you wanted to go take a look at that and follow along. Now, it's got a list there toward, I would say about 40% down the page there. It's got a list of reactor coolants. There's solids and liquids, and both have different properties. We're going to deal with solids right now, and we'll deal with liquids later. Okay, so there's 4 different things to consider when you're looking at what can I use to, well, I guess 5 things to consider. First of all is going to be the complexity of getting the block. So iron is super easy to get. You just put 9 ingots in a crafting pattern and boom, you're good to go. Iron's super plentiful, but iron's probably the worst metal that you can stick in there. Maybe not the worst, but it's pretty bad. Okay, so absorption. Absorption is how much radiation this material absorbs and converts to heat. The range is from 0 to 1. So it's about halfway up the list. It's not that bad. Heat efficiency is how efficient radiation is converted to heat. And again, the range is 0 to 1. So this is actually pretty efficient if you think about it. Moderation is how well this material moderates radiation. And this is a divisor. and greater than or equal to 1. So if 1 is the baseline, 1.4, probably not that great. So it doesn't moderate radiation that well. Radiation isn't that big of a deal in big reactors. I don't know if they're going to implement radiation at some point in the future, but it's not that big of a deal right now. So I wouldn't worry about the moderation number too much. Lastly, conductivity is is the amount of heat transferred on each exposed face. So now if we were to look at this, I've got the fuel rods here in the middle, and on each face of the fuel rod I've got a block of iron. And the conductivity here is 0.6, and it's not on a range of 0 to 1. It's on a range of 0 to whatever. So 0.6 is not that great. Conductivity is probably going to be the thing that you're going to be looking at the most. Okay, so what we did here is we took the iron blocks and we stuck them all the way around, just like this. And you notice we have open air here. Sticking iron blocks in these sections of the reactor isn't going to do anything, so don't waste materials. Okay? So let's take a look at some of the other materials that you can use. Now the list is ridiculous, and I'll let you guys take a look. There's iron, gold, diamond, emerald, graphite, glass, ice, snow, etc., etc., etc. There's lots and lots and lots of blocks that you can use. I picked 3. Gold, I'm going to show you how well gold compares to iron. So the absorption is 0.02 better, not that much different. Heat efficiency is slightly better, not that big of a deal. And like I said, moderation isn't really something that we want to worry about. However, it is better with gold. And you look at the conductivity, it's over twice as good. That means, that means we're going to be looking at more heat being pulled off with gold than with iron. Let me do a simple, I'm going to show you how much different this is. I'm going to throw some ingots in here. That way the fuel is full. We're going to turn this reactor on, and we're going to turn this reactor on. Okay? Let it ramp up a little bit. And this is putting out over 1,000 RF per tick. That's a lot. When you compare that to this one down here that was putting out 260 or whatever, this is 4 times better, 5 times better. Okay, so that's not bad. Come over to here. This one is roughly about the same. It's not too bad. It's not that much different. So when you look at like the conductivity, when you look at these two materials, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. One more thing to look at here. The next one, this is considered to be one of the better metals to use in the game, is Enderium. Now, Enderium is really expensive to make. I'll let you look up the recipe for that in NEI. But let's go ahead and stick some ingots in here. Now let's take before we turn that on, let's take a look at the comparison here. Absorption is not that much different. Heat efficiency is not that much different. Conductivity is a little bit better. So let's turn that on and see how it compares. So now this one over here was sitting at 1.2 when it was up, and this one is also at 1.2-ish. This one's at 1.3. So it is getting better the more expensive materials that you use. However, solid fuel or solid heat management isn't that great of a thing. It is required. It's something that you want to take into consideration. Definitely look at the chart, and you do use it in your reactors. But as far as like it alone, it doesn't really do that much. So these 3 reactors right here, these 5x5s, are not that efficient. However, they're pretty basic, and you're going to want to upgrade to a 5x5 from a 3x3. Now you don't have to make your reactors cubed. You could just do like a 5x3 or something. They don't have to be a 5x5. However, I recommend keeping your reactors a cube. So equal distance, height, width, and depth there. So, all right, here I made this little comparison here for you. The best absorption in the game is a lead block. Again, remember, absorption is how much radiation the material absorbs and converts to heat. Radiation isn't that big of a deal. So It's not the big. It's not that something that we need to worry about. I listed the liquids on here. We'll go over the liquids later. I'm only showing you highlighting 2 liquids, the worst and the best. Okay, so the best heat efficiency, again, a heat efficiency is the radiation converted to heat. And it sounds like it's very similar to absorption, but the absorption is absorbing that radiation to heat. The heat efficiency is converting it from the radiation to heat. So I wouldn't really worry about that. These are the best of the different categories. Really what you want to look at is the last one there. The best conductivity is diamonds or indium. So yeah, diamond blocks, you can stick diamond blocks in there. Diamond blocks are really good with 3. And then the gelid cryothium is the best liquid. So again, I'll let you go to ftbwiki.org/big_reactors and take a look at that list. Okay, the next thing on our list is going to be automation. And the first thing on our list is how to automatically turn on and off the reactor using the reactor redstone port. Very simple. It's a lot like the power tap, but you're just going to put a gold ingot in the middle, and that turns it into the power, the reactor redstone port. Okay, before we get into that real quick, I wanted to show you how to automate the extraction and insertion of fuel and waste. So just simply put a chest or any kind of your inventory system connected to this. I'm going to use some chests right now and some Ender IO item conduits. Now what you're going to do is this is going to be the input here. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have two access ports, one yellow and one blue. Now to change it from yellow to blue, you can either come into the UI and click here on outlet mode, or if you have a wrench, you can simply right click. Okay, that's how you do that. So the yellow is going to be the input. So what you're going to do is come on here and turn that into insert. And then, so this is set up to automatically pull from the chest and stick it into here. Okay. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to say extract without a signal. And this one up here needs to be an insert. Okay. So anytime a cyanide ingot shows up here, our item conduit is just going to automatically suck it out and stick it into this chest. So let's grab ourselves a stack of this, stick it in there. Now this is going to automatically pull it out and stick it in our reactor. Okay, and that's just a simple way to automate filling up and extracting your fuel. Okay, so now let's look at automating turning it on and off. So I have in the back here a simple setup for the reactor redstone port. You are going to need 2 redstone ports to make this work, and this is basically a simple inversion circuit here. Not that complicated. So what you want to do is going to want to click on one of your reactor redstone ports, and this is the UI that you're going to get. You can turn the reactor on and off with the signal. So you can make it to, if you want just one of these, you can have a lever that you can turn on and off. That works. So if you were to set from signal, you were to click on this and hit commit. And then you could put your lever here and flip it on and off whenever you wanted to. A very simple way of doing that. You can also set it on pulse. If you wanted to set up a clock or whatever, you would have it turn on and off. There's a bunch of settings here that you can go through. I recommend coming over here to energy amount, and while above a certain percentage, it's going to produce a redstone signal. Okay, what that's going to do is when this is producing a redstone signal, it's going to turn this redstone torch off. Okay, that's how the inversion circuit works. So what I like to do is, personally, I like to set mine to 50%. Okay. So when the reactor is above 50%, you're going to turn this circuit on, or this line on, and turn this line off. Well, that means we can come in here and say, okay, let's set this to power on and off from a signal. So as long as this is on, the reactor should be on. Now, as soon as this turns into 50% energy here, it's going to turn the reactor off. And it's not going to do that because we have that connected to it. So let's take that off. And this is going to quickly ramp up to 50%. And then once that happens, this circuit is going to turn off. Now, while we let that fill up, I'm going to show you another alternative to this. So if you don't want to use redstone because of rain and water and whatnot, you can use something called an insulated redstone circuit from Ender.io. So here's how you set this up, and you can also use these invert cells. Just a heads up, if you use these invert cells, they sometimes quit working if you switch into like the nether or the end or something like that. So just keep that in mind. These two are not my favorite ways of automating, but they are pretty cheap. Okay, so you're going to stick this on here, and you're going to put the conduit out and run it like that. So now you'll notice that it's not connecting to this. So what you're going to want to do is take your wrench and right click on the surface, and that connects it. Okay, so basically you're going to set this up the exact same way. Okay, above 50%, commit, and you're going to come over here and you're going to say active with signal. So now this should have turned on the reactor. Yep, it sure did. So let's put some fuel in here. I just tossed that. I did. Okay. Put that in there. Now this should start running. Perfect. All right. How close is it to 50%? Not anywhere close at all. Okay. So we'll come back to these, and I'll show you kind of how this is working. And that's how you set that up. Okay, now this is completely waterproof. This is rainproof, but again, you want to be careful with the invert cells. All right. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at the reactor RedNet port. Now, RedNet is an interesting system introduced by Minefactory Reloaded. I usually see Minefactory Reloaded as part of any Big Reactors setup, so that's why I'm including it in this video. So there's two ways to here, let me work backwards just a little bit here. Okay, so the recipe here requires RedNet cable. Okay, RedNet cable requires plastic, so I'm going to show you how to get some of that plastic. Okay, so you can either take rubbers from rubber trees from Industrial Craft and smelt them, or you can take the Minefactory Reloaded rubber bar, which comes from the rubber trees as well from Minefactory Reloaded, and you can smelt those and you'll get this raw plastic. Okay, same thing for both of them. That way you can use both kinds of rubber. You're going to take 4 of those and you're going to put them in a crafting station, and you're going to get 4 plastic sheets. Okay, and then you simply take 6 plastic sheets and 3 redstone and get yourself some RedNet cable. Okay, then you're going to take 4 reactor casings, 4 of those RedNet cables, and a piece of gold, and you're going to get your reactor RedNet port. Now the RedNet port operates based off of here, let's stick some fuel in here. Okay, that's going to automatically fill it up, but it's not going to turn on. All right, so now this is the RedNet system right here. So basically it's set up exactly the same way as the redstone controller, but with RedNet. So you take the RedNet cable here and connect it to what's called the programmable RedNet controller. Okay, that's all you got to do. You don't have to do really anything. Other than that, what you're going to want to do is you want to click on this, and the RedNet operates off of colored panels. Now you can go and take a look at how to set up RedNet systems. It's a pretty powerful system and can run a lot of really good logistics off of that. And that looked really crazy for a second, but it's not too bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to take basically the same system. You're going to put your energy and you're going to stick it in, let's say, the white color. Okay, and then over here you're going to take the power and let's say we're going to put it in the orange color, for example. Still the same concept. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to say that we want to make this an inverter. Okay, there's a whole lot of stuff in here. Like I said, you can go watch another video on how RedNet works. Like I said, it's really powerful. And then you're going to want to make sure that you set it up correctly. Okay, so there's a bunch of different options in here. What you're going to want is left, in, out, left. This is the left side. Okay, and you're going to want it white. That's the color we set up over here. All right, and then you're going to input output to the right side in the orange color, which is what we set up over here. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that when I put this in here, I don't get any options to set how much energy. I think that's a bug with this current mod pack. Don't really worry about it. Generally, you're going to get the same UI that you would have gotten over here, where you can set the percentage. Okay, and again, when I put this in here, you can have it set to level or pulse. Okay, so it's not that big of a deal. It's the same system. It's basically just like this over here, but with RedNet. So if you're already running like a RedNet system, or like I said, if you want to watch a video on how to set this up because this is an inventory manager, this is all kinds of really crazy logistic stuff. It's really powerful. So if you have a system like this, you can connect this to your RedNet controller and be good to go. All right, let's see how these are doing. Now these turned off. Perfect. Okay, they got over 50%. They turned off. So let's grab ourselves an energy cell here. Oh, let's grab this one here. Let's stick that back on there. Okay, now you'll notice that the energy went down below 50% again and turned back on. So that's how you automate with the RedNet, or the Redstone and RedNet, really. Both of them are exactly the same. Now, my personal favorite is the why is this on? Okay. My personal favorite is ComputerCraft. I am going to show you how to program real quick one of these. It's super simple. The code is very short, very simple, not difficult to understand at all. First of all, you're going to want to make yourself a little redstone repeater here, because that's part of the recipe for the computer port. Okay, so let's go back. Let's toss some of this in here for a second. Let that fill up. All right, the reactor computer port goes anywhere on the reactor, and then you're going to want to connect that with a network cable and a I think these are called modems. Oh shoot. Wired modem. That is exactly what they're called. All right, that's how you do that. Okay, so there's got to be a modem on touching the computer, and there's got to be a modem touching the reactor. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to right-click this and ignore what that's saying right there. Not that big of a deal, but you do want to pay attention to this one. When you right-click this and the red shows up, see how that turns on and off? Okay, you're going to want to pay attention to this. Big Reactors - reactor _ the number. The number is the big deal right there, okay? Because this is that's the number of the reactor. Okay, then what you're going to want to do is come into this, okay? And then create whatever program you want. And you do that by saying edit and then whatever, and then naming the program. Let's just name it reactor, okay? So type in edit reactor, and that's going to bring you, and then hit enter, and that's going to bring you to a screen here that shows you your program. Okay, now I'm using an advanced computer. It's made with gold, and it's not that expensive. If you want to use a basic computer, it works the same. You're just not going to get all the same color information that I'm going to get here. Okay, so this part is really important. This variable that I'm naming right here, R, can be anything. It can be Big Reactor, or it can be Reactor 1, or whatever. I'm just going to name it R for now. Space equals, and then peripheral dot wrap, open bracket, quote, and this is going to be what we just saw on that message. Big reactor is plural, dash reactor. Oops, gotta be capitalized. It's gotta be exactly the same. Reactor underscore 0. End quote. Close parentheses. Okay, that's super important. You need to do that. If you don't do that, nothing's gonna work. Okay, simple program that I wrote. It's not complicated at all. It's going to be give me just a second here. Okay, so while true do. You gotta be careful with these kind of while true do's because they can crash your server, but I'll show you how to fix that in just a second. If r.get energy stored is greater than 10 million divided by 2, then. Now, what that line is just saying is if the R, whenever you reference this R here with a period after it, it's going to call this line up here. So if this big reactor 0, basically is what this is saying, if the big reactor 0 energy stored is greater than 50%, basically is all that that's saying, then what you're going to want to do is r.set active false. Okay, that has to be lowercase. Active has to start with a capital A, just like that. Okay, else r.set active true. End. Okay, so now what those two lines is saying, if the energy stored is greater than 50%, then turn off the big reactor. Otherwise, turn it on. Not that complicated, okay? And then you're going to want a sleep 0 end. Now remember how I said the while true do's are kind of dangerous to mess with? If you don't put sleep 0 in here, then the reactors are going to not work. The program is basically going to run so fast that it shuts itself off. It's not going to crash your server or need to crash your game or anything, but it will turn the program off and it's not going to work. Okay, there's other kind of while true do loops that you can set up if you don't do them correctly, where they'll just run infinitely and you'll never be able to turn them off unless you terminate the program or destroy the computer. Okay, last thing you're going to want to do is hit Control, Enter to save, Control, right arrow, exit, enter to exit. Okay, now we have our reactor program working. So if I were to type reactor, if we get no error messages, then we know that the program is working. So come over here, we'll see that it turned on. It's producing power. Again, I've got one of these stupid things on here. Now it should be building up power, okay? Now one thing that you're going to want to do, anytime that you leave your Control T to terminate the program, okay? Anytime you leave to go to the end or the nether, or you turn off your computer or whatever, and you come back, you're going to need to type in reactor again, and that's really annoying. So what you're going to want to do is hit edit startup. Okay, and then the program I believe is shell.run reactor, I think. Maybe it's quote reactor. Yep. Okay, that's all you have to do. Let me go through that real quick, a little bit slower. So edit startup. Now startup comes with your computer. So it's not like you're creating a program. And what startup does is anytime that the computer is loaded in a chunk, it's going to run the startup program. So what we're doing is we're giving it the command shell.run. So basically we're telling it, say, hey, whenever you run your startup program, run the reactor program. Okay. So now you can either type in startup You can type reactor or whatever, it doesn't matter. Whenever you start the game or whenever you load back into the game, whenever you load the chunk, the program is going to run. And that's all that there is to it. It's not that scary, not that complicated. It's really simple, really easy to use, and that's all there is to computer craft, and that is all there is to automating your big reactor. Okay, the last thing that we're doing in this video is running rather long, but the last thing we're going to cover is liquid heating. So now again, if you reference back that list over there, I didn't even list water because water is the worst. However, water is an option. Okay, let me go over to my list here. Water gives you conductivity of 0.1. Now, if you remember all the way back over here, let's take a look. The worst thing that we had was iron, and iron is 6 times better than water. So don't even bother with water. However, water can be used in the spots where just don't use water. Just trust me on this. Don't use water. But anyway, that's the numbers there for the water. And what you're going to want to do, and I left this open on purpose, is you're going to want to put the liquids, whatever your liquids are, right there. It serves you no purpose to put the water here or in the corner. You're going to want the liquids touching the surfaces. Okay? The surfaces of your fuel rods. Alright, now let's grab... Okay, now you'll notice that I have, this is a 7 by 7 by 5. I didn't make it a 7 by 7 by 7 just to show you that it doesn't have to be a cube, although I recommend going 7 by 7 by 7. Okay, now the pattern that I've got here is a 5 system set, or 5 fuel rod setup, whereas this is only 1. Okay, now you could put some fuel rods here, and then put your these enderiums in the corner here, and that would work rather well. It's gonna work definitely better than this is running right here. Probably about the same actually. Maybe a little bit better just because water does affect it, but not that much of a difference. Okay, and then I surrounded that with water, or with liquids. Okay, so let's toss in some. This is going to take more than 1 stack. Let's put 3 stacks in here. I don't think it'll take that many. Okay. There we go, filled it up. And let's turn this on. We'll let that ramp up. It is feeding into an energy cell because I want to show you the difference in energy production. Okay, now this is gelid cryothium. Gelid cryothium is a rather dangerous thing. If I was in survival and I came down here and sat in this, I would get damaged. It's super cold. You'll notice that it produced some snow here on the outside, so don't sit in this stuff too long, it'll kill you. Also, another thing to know about gelid cryothium is it falls, whereas water doesn't. If I were to put water up here, it'd flow like water does. Really annoying. Messes everything up. Okay. Gelid cryothium, on the other hand, falls. So if I were to put that there, it would fall. See that? Okay. So then I'm going to come around and I'm going to put this just on the fuel rods. Okay. And then oops. Don't do that. You'll waste yourself some gelid cryothium. Stuff isn't that expensive to make. It just takes some snowballs, some redstone, a couple other things. Blitz rods. If you're running certain mods, blitzes aren't there, but you can find it some other way. All right, so let's crank this bad boy on. Let's put some yellow right in the box here, or yellorium, whatever. Okay, and then we'll turn it on. Okay, and we'll see the difference that this makes. Now the conductivity of this is 3. It's the highest number that we've seen so far. and the moderation is 6. That is by far the highest number that we've seen so far. Okay, so now this is putting out 7,000, whereas this one is putting out 6. See how much difference the liquid coolant makes? Okay, so this is putting out 6.2 thousand RF per tick. This is putting out 1,100 more. So that is important. That's liquid cooling, that's solid cooling, that's big reactors in a nutshell. Automation, that is it. Once you get to this point, guys, and like I said, I recommend making a 7x7x7. You're going to be using this for a long time. It is producing fuel or waste rather quickly, but it is also producing power rather quickly. So keep that in mind. Alright guys, that is the first episode of this series. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for watching.